They call the cops on me for parking my own boat on my own lake, on my own property. What they didn't know was that I had just sold my tech company for $47 million. And I was about to turn their petty power trip into the most expensive mistake of their lives. I stood on my dock at 7 a.m., coffee in hand, watching my 24-foot base boat bob gently in the morning mist. The crunch of gravel under approaching boots broke the serene silence. 3 sheriff's deputies were making their way toward me, and across the lake, I could see Linda Hartwell, the HOA president, gesturing dramatically, as if orchestrating a military operation. The hum of my boat engine, still cooling from my morning fishing trip, faded into the crisp air as the lead deputy stepped forward. "Sir, we've had a complaint about illegal boat operation." I nearly choked on my coffee. Illegal? On my own lake, on my own property. But what really got me was the audacity of it all. Let me back up and explain how I got here. My name is Jake Morrison. 6 months ago, I was living the Silicon Valley dream, or nightmare, depending on who you ask. After 15 years of building tech companies, I finally hit it big when Microsoft acquired my cybersecurity firm. $47 million later, I had the freedom to chase a lifelong dream, disappearing into the Texas countryside and fishing whenever I pleased. I found a perfect 50-acre ranch outside Austin, complete with an 8-acre private lake that sparkled like a jewel in the morning sun. The main house sat about 200 yards from the water, nestled among ancient oak trees that had been standing since before Texas was a state. The previous owner, an elderly rancher named Bill Thompson, had one piece of advice as he handed me the keys: watch out for those pushy neighbors in the subdivision. They think they own the whole county. I should have listened. The day I launched my boat for the first time, I felt truly at home. The mix of diesel exhaust, pine trees, and lake water created an intoxicating scent of freedom I hadn't breathed in years. I had been out maybe 20 minutes, just getting a feel for the lake's contours, when I spotted someone marching toward my property line, clipboard and measuring tape in hand. Linda Hartwell was 58, and it looked like she had been born clutching a rule book. She'd been president of the Lakeside Estates HOA for the past 3 years and carried that particular brand of suburban authority that comes from having too much time and too little real power. Her perfectly styled gray hair didn't so much as flutter in the breeze, and her lips were pursed in permanent disapproval. "Excuse me," she called across the water, her voice booming like a foghorn. "That boat is an eyesore visible from our community and violates aesthetic standards." I cut the engine and drifted closer to shore. I'm confused. This is my private lake on my private property." Linda's face flushed red. "The HOA covenant clearly states that any structure or vehicle that creates visual pollution affecting neighboring property values is subject to regulation. That boat," she pointed at my modest base boat like it was a nuclear submarine, "is bringing down our home values." A metallic taste of frustration flooded my mouth. This was exactly the kind of petty politics I had moved out here to escape. "Lady, I don't know what HOA you're talking about, but you have zero authority over what I do on my own land." The rough cedar planks of the dock creaked under my boots as I climbed out of the boat. Linda scribbled furiously on her clipboard, the sound of her pen scratching against paper like nails on a chalkboard. "We'll see about that," she snapped. "I'm filing a formal complaint with county code enforcement. That boat will be gone by the end of the week, or you'll be hearing from our attorneys." Clicking across the asphalt in her heels back to her white Mercedes SUV, she left me standing there, wondering what fresh hell I had stumbled into. That night, I did what any good tech guy does when faced with a problem. I dove into research, property records, HOA covenants, zoning laws, immersing myself in the rabbit hole of rural Texas bureaucracy. That's when I discovered something very interesting about water rights, something Linda Hartwell would soon wish she had never forced me to learn. Little did she know, her homework assignment was about to become my secret weapon. Linda didn't waste any time acting on her threat. Within 48 hours, she filed a formal complaint with the county, claiming I was running a commercial watercraft operation on residential property. Apparently, in Linda's twisted logic, one guy with a fishing boat equals a full-blown marina. But she didn't stop there. Oh no, that would have been too simple. She rallied 12 HOA members to sign a petition demanding I remove my boat for the safety and aesthetic integrity of the community. Keep in mind, this was a beat-up base boat, not the Queen Mary. Then she hit the local grocery store, spreading rumors about the disrespectful newcomer who thought money could buy the right to ruin the peaceful lake. And, as if that wasn't enough, she posted photos of my boat on Nextdoor with a caption reading, "New neighbor's industrial eyesore ruining our $1 million views. What can we do to stop this?" The comments section exploded like a dumpster fire. People called me everything from an entitled tech bro to an environmental terrorist, while others told Linda to mind her own business. It was like watching a virtual mob form in real time. 3 days later, I got a visit from Tommy Rodriguez, the county inspector assigned to the case. Tommy was a straight shooter in his mid-30s, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else than dealing with HOA drama. "Look, Mr. Morrison," he said, glancing around my property with obvious confusion, "I've got to ask, where exactly is this commercial operation Mrs. Hartwell is complaining about?" I gestured toward my boat. "That's it. One boat, one owner, 0 customers." Tommy shook his head and lowered his voice. "Between you and me, she's filed 4 to 7 complaints in the past 3 years. 4 to 7. She's driving everyone at the county office absolutely crazy." But Linda knew just enough law to make life miserable for anyone who crossed her. Her strategy was simple: file complaint after complaint until people gave up rather than fight. That's when the light bulb went off. This wasn't about my boat at all. This was Linda's playbook: harass, intimidate, and exhaust people into submission. Well, she had picked the wrong guy this time. After Tommy left, I spent the evening in the county courthouse basement, surrounded by the musty smell of old property records and decades of bureaucratic history. My fingers traced scratchy, photocopied documents that held secrets Linda had never bothered to uncover. And boy, did I hit the jackpot. It turned out that the Lakeside Estates development had been marketed with promises of exclusive lake access for all residents. Glossy brochures showed family swimming, boating, and fishing in crystal-clear waters. There was just one tiny problem: the lake access had never been legally granted. The developer had made verbal promises but never secured the actual water rights. For 5 years, Linda's precious HOA members had been using my boat ramp illegally, launching kayaks and pontoon boats from my property without permission. I sat in my truck that night, fingers drumming on the steering wheel, letting the magnitude of this discovery sink in. Here's a nugget that could save you thousands. Always request a full survey when buying waterfront property. Water rights are separate from land rights, and previous owners can retain access privileges you never knew existed. Water rights can be worth more than the land itself, and those rights can trump any HOA covenant or neighborhood agreement. I drove home with a plan forming in my mind. Linda wanted to play legal hardball. Game on. But first, I needed to document exactly how many of her precious HOA members were trespassing on my property. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching 3 different Lakeside Estates residents launch boats from my ramp like they owned the place. Meanwhile, Linda was posting on Facebook about taking back our lake from entitled outsiders. If she only knew how entitled she was about to feel. Linda's next move proved she was either completely delusional or genuinely believed she could gaslight an entire county into submission. She formed something called the Lake Restoration Committee, claiming my boat was disturbing local wildlife. I kid you not. She actually contacted the Austin American-Statesman, citing environmental concerns about motorboat pollution threatening the delicate ecosystem. The newspaper didn't bite. But Linda wasn't done. She filed a noise complaint, claiming my 6 a.m. fishing trips violated quiet hours. Apparently, starting my boat engine before sunrise was somehow destroying the peace and tranquility of her gated community, a community that sits next to a working cattle ranch, where roosters crow at 4:30 every morning. Then she tried to get really clever. Linda petitioned the city council to rezone my property as a conservation area, which would ban motorized vehicles on the water. When I found out about this maneuver, I nearly choked on my morning coffee. The audacity was breathtaking. But Linda's harassment campaign was just getting started. Her HOA minions began photographing me every single time I used my boat. I'm talking telephoto lenses, like I was some kind of celebrity criminal. Someone, though I had my suspicions, placed no motorboats signs along my shoreline, on my property. The audacity of these people was staggering. Linda's husband, Bruce, initiated the creepiest part of the operation, hovering near our property line with binoculars, like some kind of suburban spy. This guy would stand there for hours, watching me with the intensity of a hawk tracking a field mouse. The cold morning mist rising from the lake during my 6 a.m. fishing trips was regularly pierced by the mechanical click of camera shutters echoing across the water. The final straw came when someone filed an anonymous complaint claiming I was running an illegal fishing guide service. Apparently, one guy fishing alone somehow equals a commercial operation in Lindaland. Time to lawyer up. I hired Sarah Chen, a property attorney specializing in water rights who charged $3,000 an hour, money well spent. Sarah was sharp as a tack and had zero patience for HOA nonsense. Within a week, she uncovered information that made my jaw drop. My original 1960s ranch deed included exclusive rights to the entire lake, not just the water touching my property, the whole damn lake. The Lakeside Estates developer never owned water rights to sell access to anyone. It gets better. Historical records showed the lake had been artificially expanded in the 1970s using money from the ranch's previous owner. Essentially, the HOA was claiming rights to improvements they never paid for. But here's where it gets really interesting. Sarah discovered that Linda's HOA had been charging members a $2,000 annual lake access fee for 5 years. Do the math. That's $47,000 collected for access they never legally had the right to provide. Jake, Sarah said during our second meeting, her voice barely containing excitement. If residents paid for services the HOA couldn't legally provide, we were potentially looking at fraud charges. Here's your second knowledge nugget. HOAs cannot regulate private property beyond their boundaries without specific easement agreements. Collecting fees for amenities they don't own could even qualify as wire fraud, a federal crime. While Sarah was building our legal case, I launched my own surveillance operation. I installed security cameras around the boat dock and began documenting every illegal use of my boat ramp. The spreadsheet grew longer by the day, HOA members launching kayaks, kids swimming off my dock, adults fishing from my shoreline. The bitter taste of coffee became my constant companion during those pre-dawn stakeouts, watching Linda's husband trespass on my land while monitoring my every move. Every morning, I reviewed the footage and added another entry to my evidence file. The beauty of it all, Linda had no idea she was building my case for me, one trespass at a time. But Linda was just getting warmed up. Her next escalation proved that when cornered, some people don't just double down, they go nuclear. Her desperation was showing, and desperate people do stupid things. She contacted Texas Parks and Wildlife, claiming I needed a commercial fishing license because, and I quote, "No one fishes that much without making money from it." The state investigator who called me actually laughed when I explained the situation. Next, she organized a community safety meeting about my dangerous boating practices. The flyer she distributed showed a dramatic photo of my boat with the caption, "Is your family safe?" As if I were Captain Ahab hunting the white whale instead of a guy trying to catch bass for dinner. Her next-door posts grew increasingly unhinged. She claimed, "My boat creates waves that damage the natural shoreline," and even threatened to sue me for diminishing property values through visual pollution. The comment threads became a battlefield between her supporters and anyone who thought she'd lost her mind. But Linda's masterpiece of stupidity came on a Tuesday morning. She called 911, claiming my boat had almost hit children swimming near the shore. The problem? There were no children swimming. My security cameras proved it. The lake was empty, except for me peacefully fishing about 200 yards from shore. Sheriff's Deputy Maria Santos arrived 20 minutes later, looking like she'd rather be wrestling alligators than dealing with neighborhood drama. "Mr. Morrison, we received a report about reckless boating endangering swimmers." I pointed to my security monitor showing live footage of the empty lake. "Deputy, as you can see, there's nobody swimming. There hasn't been anyone in the water all morning." Deputy Santos watched the footage, then looked across the lake where Linda stood on her deck, still on the phone. Her expression shifted from professional concern to barely contained irritation. "Sir, this appears to be a false report. We take these very seriously." She walked over to speak with Linda, a conversation I couldn't hear but thoroughly enjoyed watching, lots of hand gestures and head shaking from the deputy's side. Later that afternoon, Deputy Santos stopped by my house. "Mr. Morrison, I've warned Mrs. Hartwell about filing false reports. It's a Class B misdemeanor in Texas, and repeat offenses can result in jail time." Meanwhile, My intelligence-gathering operation was paying off. Security footage revealed 23 separate instances of trespassing by HOA members over just 2 weeks. Linda had been giving lake tours to prospective homebuyers, flaunting water access her community didn't legally have. I even caught her husband Bruce dumping lawn fertilizer near the shoreline, a clear environmental violation. But the real bombshell came when Sarah Chen discovered that the original Lakeside Estates developer still owed $340,000 in unpaid property taxes. The guy had gone bankrupt and disappeared, leaving behind a trail of legal liabilities that nobody had bothered to investigate. Community pressure was building from both sides. Other ranchers started calling me with their own HOA horror stories. Jim Patterson, who owned the spread 2 miles north, told me Linda's group had tried to force him to paint his barn because it was visible from the subdivision. Eddie Martinez at the local bait shop mentioned that Linda's people had pressured him to refuse me service. I told him, "This is America, and I'll sell tackle to whoever's got money." Eddie grinned. "But they're trying to organize some kind of boycott." Even County Commissioner Frank Johnson quietly suggested I might have grounds for harassment charges after the 4th false police report. Meanwhile, the next-door comment sections had turned into digital warfare between Linda's dwindling supporters and a growing chorus of people fed up with her antics. One comment stood out. "Linda, you've lost your damn mind. It's his boat on his lake. Get a hubby." But I was starting to see Linda's real endgame. This wasn't about boat aesthetics or property values. It was about a land grab. My research revealed that Linda's husband, Bruce, worked for Sunset Development Company, the same firm that had quietly been buying rural properties around the lake for the past 2 years. They wanted me gone so they could buy my ranch cheap and develop it into another subdivision. The boat complaint had been just the opening move in a longer game. That evening, I sat on my dock, listening to the sharp scent of Linda's perfume still lingering in the air from our latest confrontation. I knew her next move would be even more desperate. People with hidden agendas don't give up easily. That's when I noticed unusual activity at the old Marina, 2 miles downstream. Boats coming and going, people with clipboards and measuring equipment. Something big was happening, and I had a feeling it was about to change everything. Curiosity got the better of me, so I drove down to Sunset Marina to check it out. What I found was a family business in crisis, and the key to everything. Frank Kowalski was 6 to 7, looking like he'd been carved from the same weathered oak trees that surrounded his marina. He had built the place from nothing in 1978, back when the lake was just a fishing hole and Austin was still a sleepy college town. Now he was facing foreclosure after his wife's cancer treatment had bankrupted them. "Lost Martha last year," Frank said, his voice thick with 4 to 5 years of memories. "Medical bills wiped out everything we'd saved. Bank wants their money by the end of the month, or they are seizing the property." As we talked, Frank mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "Funny thing is, your HOA folks have been using my boat launch for years. Never paid a dime, but they act like they own the place." That's when Frank dropped the bombshell that changed everything. "You know, son, your ranch lake feeds directly into my marina through underground springs and surface flow. Whoever controls that upstream water flow pretty much controls my whole operation." My mind started racing. "What do you mean, controls?" Frank pulled out a yellowed water rights document from 1960. "According to this, your property holds what they call senior water rights for the entire 12-mile creek system. You could legally restrict water flow and shut down every boat launch, every dock, every water-dependent business downstream if you wanted to." The legal reality hit me like a lightning bolt. My ranch didn't just control my lake, it controlled the entire watershed feeding Frank's marina. And here's the kicker. The marina property included the exact boat launch that Linda's HOA had been using illegally for 5 years. Sarah Chen nearly dropped her coffee when I called her with the news. "Jake, you're not just talking about water rights. You're talking about a monopoly. Senior water rights from 1892 trump any modern development claims. Every dock, every boat slip, every drop of water those people use downstream is subject to your legal control." The financial implications were staggering. Frank's marina property was worth $2.3 million if operational, but the bank would sell it for $800,000 in foreclosure. It needed about $200,000 in repairs, but the location was prime real estate with a built-in customer base. Here's the beautiful part. Linda's HOA had been trespassing on Marina property for boat access, thinking they were getting away with something. If I bought the Marina, I could legally ban every single one of them from the water entirely. But this wasn't just about revenge anymore. Frank had tears in his eyes talking about 4 to 5 years of building something from nothing. His late wife had painted the sunset mural that still hung in the Marina office. His grandson was learning to fish from the same dock Frank had built with his own hands in 1978. "I'd keep you on as manager," I told Frank. "Steady salary, benefits, and your family legacy stays intact. You know this business better than anyone." Frank's weathered face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "Son, you be saving more than just a business. You'd be saving my family's heart." The pieces were falling into place. Buy the Marina, help Frank save his family legacy, gain total control over Linda's water access, and position myself to shut down her harassment campaign permanently. Linda wanted to play power games. I was about to buy the entire game board. But I knew she wouldn't go quietly. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and I had a feeling her next moves would test every bit of legal protection Sarah could provide. The musty smell of old documents filled Frank's office as we shook hands on the deal. Outside, the gentle lapping of water against the dock sounded like opportunity knocking. Linda had no idea that her petty harassment campaign was about to backfire spectacularly. I turned my ranch office into a war room that would have made a Pentagon general proud. Maps covered every wall, showing water flow patterns, property boundaries, and legal jurisdictions. Sarah Chen brought in Marcus Webb, a water rights attorney with 30 years of experience, who took one look at my documents and whistled low. "Son, you're not just buying a Marina," Marcus said, spreading survey maps across my dining table. "You're buying a monopoly on water access for this entire region. In water law, being there first means you control everything downstream." Frank Kowalski became my secret weapon, providing 4 to 5 years of local knowledge and Marina records that revealed just how dependent the surrounding community was on his business. Tommy Rodriguez, the county inspector who had become an unlikely ally, unofficially advised us on code enforcement angles that could shut down any retaliatory moves. And Linda might try. The legal strategy was beautiful in its simplicity. Marcus explained it like this: "Your senior water rights give you nuclear-level leverage, but you don't want to be the guy who nuked a neighborhood. Plan A is offering the HOA a chance to purchase legal lake access at fair market value. Plan B is cutting off their water entirely and forcing them to drive 20 minutes to the next public lake." Sarah was simultaneously building the harassment case. "We've got documentation of false police reports, trespassing, vandalism, and defamation," she said. "Linda's handed us enough evidence to bury her in civil court for the next 5 years. The financial pieces fell into place like dominoes. My bank pre-approved a $1.2 million cash offer for the Marina, no inspections, no contingencies, closing in 7 days. Frank negotiated to stay on as general manager at $65,000 a year plus benefits, with a renovation budget of $300,000 to cover new docks, boat lifts, and an expanded tackle shop. Revenue projections looked solid, $180,000 annually from boat slips, fuel sales, tackle, and guide services. Frank's reputation in the fishing community was gold, and word was already spreading that the Marina might get a new lease on life. The best part was watching the community rally around us. Local contractors, tired of Linda's complaints about their unsightly work trucks, volunteered labor at cost. Eddie Martinez from the bait shop agreed to move his operation to the Marina, bringing his loyal customer base with him. Even the sheriff's department was quietly rooting for us. Deputy Santos mentioned they'd increase patrols around the Marina because they were tired of Linda's emergency calls that wasted taxpayer resources. Here's a knowledge nugget that could save you serious money. LLCs protect personal assets from business lawsuits and provide tax advantages when structured properly. When buying distressed commercial property, cash offers without inspection contingencies can save 20 to 30% off market value because desperate sellers will often choose certainty over top dollar. I established Lonia Lake Holdings LLC to own the Marina and protect my personal assets. Marcus filed preliminary injunctions against HOA trespassing while Sarah prepared cease and desist letters for all HOA members illegally using my water. The psychological warfare component was my favorite part. We planned to let Linda discover the marina purchase through public records the day before her monthly HOA meeting. Frank would casually mention his new owner, a man with strong opinions about trespassers, to anyone who asked. The surveillance network expanded like a spiderweb. I upgraded to 12 security cameras covering all water access points. Frank's old fishing buddies became unofficial lake patrol volunteers, eager to help after years of watching HOA members treat the marina like their personal playground. Tommy Rodriguez agreed to prioritize any real violations by HOA members, while Sarah's paralegal monitored Linda's social media for defamatory posts we could use in court. As I stood in my war room that final evening before the marina closing, surrounded by maps and legal documents, I felt something I hadn't experienced since selling my company, the thrill of a plan coming together perfectly. Sarah called with one final warning. "Jake, corner people do desperate things. Linda's about to lose everything she thought she controlled. Be ready for anything." I was ready. The question was Linda ready for me? Linda's discovery of the marina sale was better than any reality TV show I'd ever watched. Rebecca Martinez, an HOA member who worked at the county courthouse, spotted the property transfer documents and immediately called Linda in a panic. 20 minutes later, Linda's white Mercedes was speeding toward the marina like she was rushing to a 5-alarm fire. I watched through my security cameras as she screeched into the gravel parking lot, jumped out, and began photographing the sold sign like it was evidence in a murder case. Frank, bless his heart, played his role perfectly. When Linda marched up demanding to know who bought the property, he just shrugged. New owner seems like a real nice fella. Very particular about property rights, though. Real stickler for keeping trespassers off his land. You could practically see the gears grinding in Linda's head as she realized her community's water access was now controlled by her worst enemy. The sharp scent of her perfume lingered in the air long after she stormed off, mingling with the smells of panic, sweat, and desperation. That evening, Linda called an emergency HOA meeting. The subject line of her email read, "Community emergency, hostile takeover of our lake access." She spun the marina purchase as retaliation against concerned citizens and proposed immediate legal action to protect the community's property values. The meeting was a disaster for Linda. 3 members resigned on the spot, publicly stating they were tired of the drama and constant legal threats. Another 4 demanded to know why the HOA had been charging lake access fees for property they didn't even own. But Linda wasn't done escalating. Far from it. She hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on my business practices. The guy lasted exactly 1 week before calling Sarah to report that Linda's behavior was increasingly unstable and he couldn't ethically continue the work. Linda's social media posts became increasingly unhinged. She claimed I was weaponizing water rights against working families and called for a boycott of any business supporting me. She even contacted Channel 8 News, portraying the tech millionaire as bullying a small community, but the reporter reviewed the evidence and declined to run the story. Then came the sabotage. My security cameras caught Bruce Hartwell sneaking onto my property at 2 a.m., knife in hand, cutting my boat dock lines. The frayed ropes and rough splintered wood left no doubt. He was deliberately vandalizing my property. I had him dead to rights on video, destroying private property like some maritime saboteur. Anonymous calls flooded the health department, claiming Frank's marina served contaminated food. Environmental inspectors arrived after reports of toxic waste dumping, which turned out to be nothing more than Frank hosing down boat holes with biodegradable soap. Someone even created fake Yelp reviews accusing Frank of discriminating against families with children. The reviews were so obviously coordinated that Yelp removed them within 24 hours, though not before hurting Frank's feelings. The final straw came when I discovered someone had dumped used motor oil in the creek upstream from the marina. The acrid smell of petroleum contaminating our clean water made my stomach turn. This wasn't harassment anymore, it was full-blown sabotage. This was environmental crime. I provided video evidence of Bruce's dock vandalism to Deputy Santos, who arrested him that afternoon. Sarah filed restraining orders against both Bruce and Linda for trespassing and vandalism. The marina temporarily closed for a voluntary environmental inspection, which cleared us of all claims but cost 3 days of business. The media battle was turning in our favor. Local TV interviewed both sides, but Linda's on-camera performance was a disaster. She claimed discrimination against working families while standing in front of her $80,000 Mercedes. Meanwhile, I focused on property rights and supporting local businesses like Frank's family operation. The comment sections on news websites were brutal for Linda. "Karen needs to find a hobby," read one typical response. "This is what happens when HOAs get too much power," read another. The community was splitting down the middle. 8 HOA members publicly apologized to both Frank and me, with several becoming regular Marina customers. But Linda's hardcore supporters doubled down, with 4 families remaining loyal to her increasingly desperate campaign. Other area ranchers began reaching out with their own HOA horror stories. Local business owners started refusing service to Linda's group after the environmental vandalism. The tide was turning, but I knew Linda had one more desperate play left. Here's another knowledge nugget. Video evidence of property damage can transform civil disputes into criminal cases with jail time and mandatory restitution. Vandalism and environmental crimes carry felony charges that can result in prison, hefty fines, and lifetime cleanup liability. The pressure was building toward an explosive climax, and I could feel Linda preparing for her final, most desperate gambit. She pulled out every dirty trick in the book. Somehow, she tracked down my ex-wife's bitter divorce blog posts from 3 years ago, the kind of venting everyone does when a marriage falls apart. Linda tried to weaponize Rachel's old accusations about me being controlling and vindictive, conveniently ignoring that we'd reconciled our differences and remained friends. She contacted every former business partner and employee she could find, fishing for disgruntled voices. The problem? My company culture had been built on respect and fair compensation. The only dirt she found was praise for my leadership and ethics. Linda's master plan was to ambush me at the county commissioner's meeting with a parade of character witnesses. She actually thought she could turn my business success into evidence of moral failure. She had completely lost touch with reality. Her Save Our Lake Facebook group became an echo chamber of increasingly desperate claims. She posted selectively edited photos, making my modest ranch look like some kind of industrial compound. The pictures were so obviously manipulated that people started commenting with crying laughing emojis. Then came the completely fabricated claim that I'd threatened to poison the water if the HOA didn't submit to my demands. Not only had I never said anything remotely like that, I was literally spending money to improve water quality. The accusation was so absurd that even some of her supporters began questioning her credibility. While Linda was spinning wild conspiracy theories, I was quietly building an unshakable case. Sarah's defamation lawsuit was locked and loaded with $2 million in damages. Marcus had gathered statements from 15 former employees praising my character. Tommy Rodriguez had documented every false claim with factual rebuttals. Frank was organizing the Marina's grand reopening as a community appreciation day, complete with free fishing for kids and a barbecue for families. The contrast couldn't have been starker, Linda spreading hate while we brought people together. The regional newspaper published an investigative piece on Linda's history of harassment lawsuits. It turned out she'd been pulling similar stunts in 2 previous neighborhoods before moving to Lakeside Estates. The pattern was always the same: target someone, escalate until they fought back, then play the victim when consequences arrived. Bruce's breaking point came at the hardware store. He cornered me near the fishing tackle, his face red with rage, and began making threats about people who don't know their place. The entire confrontation was captured on store security cameras and witnessed by a dozen customers. I kept my voice calm and professional. "Bruce, I understand you're upset, but threatening me in public isn't going to solve anything. Why don't you have Linda call my attorney if you want to discuss this legally?" His response was to shove me and call me a series of names that would make a sailor blush. Store employees had to escort Bruce out while customers filmed the meltdown on their phones. Within hours, the video went viral on local social media, completely destroying Linda's narrative about me being the aggressor. Meanwhile, the Texas Environmental Commission's investigation into the oil dumping was yielding results. They uncovered a pattern of HOA members dumping lawn chemicals, fertilizers, and motor oil into the watershed over several years. Frank's water quality tests showed dramatic improvement since I had banned the trespassers. Linda's group was facing potential environmental fines totaling $50,000, and the state was even considering criminal charges for repeat offenders. The community building around the marina was extraordinary. Our reopening drew over 200 visitors from surrounding counties. The local veterans group held a fishing tournament that raised $8,000 for disabled veterans. County Commissioner Johnson publicly praised my investment in rural economic development. 3 other struggling local businesses approached me about partnerships. The sweet smell of barbecue smoke filled the air during our celebration, while children's laughter echoed across the water as they learned to fish from Frank's newly repaired docks. But Linda's surveillance operation had reached stalker levels. Security cameras showed her conducting midnight reconnaissance on my property. Frank's grandson overheard her at the gas station planning one final confrontation to expose me for what I really am. The private investigator she had hired even warned Sarah about Linda's increasingly unstable behavior and obsession with revenge. Even people on her payroll were growing nervous about her mental state. The stage was set for a final showdown. County commissioners had scheduled a public hearing on water rights disputes for the following Tuesday. Linda planned to pack the meeting with supporters for one last attempt to publicly destroy me. I was ready. Sarah had prepared a presentation that would end this nonsense once and for all. But I suspected Linda had one more surprise up her sleeve, and desperate people in corners are capable of anything. The county commissioner's meeting room was standing room only, packed tighter than a sardine can. Local TV cameras lined the back wall, while sharp fluorescent lighting reflected off the polished conference table like a courtroom drama. Linda arrived with 12 supporters, all wearing matching Save Our Lake t-shirts, looking like a militia ready for battle. I walked in quietly with Sarah, Marcus, Frank, and Tommy Rodriguez. No theatrics, no costumes, just facts and evidence in neat manila folders. Commissioner Johnson called for order as the crowd buzzed with anticipation. You could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Linda launched into her opening speech with the fervor of a TV evangelist. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here tonight because outside money is destroying our community values, she proclaimed, pointing dramatically at me. This man is hoarding natural resources that belong to all of us. He's intimidating families, threatening our children's safety, and using his wealth to buy his way out of legal consequences. Her supporters applauded, but I noticed the crowd wasn't entirely on her side. Scattered boos and headshakes suggested the tide was turning. Linda presented her petition with 6 to 7 signatures demanding county intervention. She accused me of monopolizing public waters and weaponizing property law against working families. Her voice cracked with emotion as she claimed I was destroying the dream of lakefront living for ordinary people. When she finished, I stood slowly and thanked the commissioners for allowing a fair hearing. No drama, no anger, just calm professionalism. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself, I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. The first slide displayed my legitimate property deed with water rights dating back to 1892. The crowd murmured as the legal reality became clear. The second slide showed security footage of repeated trespassing by HOA members over 5 years. Then came the smoking gun, a video montage of Bruce vandalizing my boat dog, complete with timestamps and clear facial identification. The rustle of papers filled the room as people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. These are recorded phone calls of Mrs. Hartwell filing false police reports, I continued, playing audio of Linda claiming my boat had nearly hit children when the lake was provably empty. Bank records showed the HOA had collected $47,000 for lake access they never legally had the right to provide. Environmental test results proved water quality had actually improved since I'd stopped the trespassing. Linda couldn't contain herself any longer. She jumped up, interrupting my presentation. Those videos are fake. This is all doctored evidence. He's bribing county officials and buying testimony. Commissioner Johnson's gavel banged sharply against the podium. Mrs. Hartwell, you're disrupting an official proceeding. Sit down or you'll be removed. But Linda was spiraling completely. She started shouting about rich people destroying small communities and corrupt officials protecting their wealthy friends. Her remaining supporters looked mortified as she accused half the county government of being on my payroll. Deputy Santos approached with a restraining order, but Linda wasn't done. She pointed at Frank and screamed, "That man is part of the conspiracy. They are all working together to steal our lake." That's when I delivered my MIC drop moment. I quietly presented a final document, a $50,000 check made out to the Williamson County Environmental Fund. Commissioners, This covers all environmental cleanup costs from illegal dumping and establishes a scholarship fund for local children pursuing environmental studies. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to protect what's legally mine and help my neighbors build something better." The crowd erupted in applause. Frank stepped forward, tears in his eyes, thanking me for saving his family's 4-to-5-year legacy. A representative from the local veterans group praised the Marina's tournament fundraising. Even some of Linda's former supporters started clapping. The commissioners voted unanimously to support my property rights and issued a formal resolution praising my community investment and environmental stewardship. County Attorney Williams warned against filing any more frivolous complaints, stating that abuse of the legal system would result in sanctions. Meanwhile, Linda was being escorted from the building by Deputy Santos after making threatening gestures toward me. Bruce had already left when the restraining order was served. In the parking lot, Linda tried to rally her remaining supporters, but only 3 people stayed to listen to her increasingly paranoid rants about conspiracies and corruption. The local newspaper photographer captured her shouting at empty folding chairs, a perfect metaphor for her isolation. As I was surrounded by well-wishers and new business partners in the parking lot, Frank's grandson tugged on my sleeve. "Mr. Jake, thank you for saving our Marina. Grandpa says you're a hero. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about standing up for what's right and helping good people along the way." 6 months later, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Sunset Marina was thriving with an 85% occupancy rate and a weekend waiting list for boat slips. Frank's grandson, Tommy, was learning business management from his grandfather, ensuring the family legacy would continue for another generation. My scholarship fund had already awarded $25,000 to local kids pursuing trade school and college, with applications pouring in from across the county. The community fishing tournaments had become monthly events, raising money for veterans, disabled children, and environmental conservation. What had started as a personal property dispute had blossomed into something that brought the entire region together. 11 former HOA members publicly apologized, with several becoming regular marina visitors who brought their families for weekend fishing trips. The new HOA leadership, elected after Linda's resignation, focused on genuine community improvement instead of harassment campaigns. Property values in the area actually increased thanks to the marina enhancements and positive publicity. Local businesses reported a tourism boom from visitors who stayed to explore the region. Eddie Martinez expanded his bait shop operation, hiring 2 part-time employees. The ripple effects of standing up to bullies spread outward like circles on calm water. As for Linda Hartwell, karma had a sense of humor. She resigned from the HOA presidency after losing a recall election 2-3-4. The civil lawsuit for defamation, vandalism, and false police reports cost her family over $30,000 in legal fees and settlements. Bruce pleaded guilty to criminal mischief and was sentenced to 200 hours of community service cleaning up the very waterways he had polluted. The house quietly went up for sale last month, and word around town was that they were relocating to a county where nobody knew their story. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. The marina became profitable within 4 months, exceeding all projections. Frank was promoted to general manager with a salary that ensured his family's financial security. Plans were already underway for expansion next year, including a boat manufacturing demonstration site and educational programs for local schools. But the real victory was personal. I had found something more valuable than financial success, a sense of purpose and community I had never experienced in Silicon Valley. Dating Sarah Chen turned out to be the unexpected bonus of this adventure. Our relationship, built on shared values of justice and integrity, felt more authentic than anything I had experienced during my tech career. The environmental impact exceeded our wildest expectations. Creek water quality reached levels not seen in 20 years after we eliminated illegal dumping. Wildlife cameras captured the return of deer, wild turkeys, and migratory birds. The University of Texas Environmental Science program now uses our marina as a research station, with students monitoring the ecosystem's recovery. My water conservation practices were adopted by neighboring ranches, creating a model for sustainable rural development that's now being studied statewide. Sometimes doing the right thing brings benefits you never imagined. Other harassment victims from across Texas contacted me for legal strategy advice after seeing news coverage of our case. A documentary crew is filming the story for a series on David versus Goliath legal battles. The Texas Attorney General's office opened an investigation into patterns of HOA abuse after receiving dozens of similar complaints. My story has been shared over 250,000 times on social media, inspiring others to fight back against petty tyrants and corrupt systems. That response proves something I'd suspected all along. People are hungry for stories where justice actually wins and communities come together. But perhaps the sweetest moment came last weekend. I was standing on the same dock where this whole story began, enjoying a sunrise fishing trip, when Frank's grandson ran up with a bass he'd caught. "Mr. Jake, look what I got." Grandpa says it's the biggest one he's ever seen from this spot. As I helped him measure his trophy fish, I thought about my parents, who taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. They would have been proud to see how their lessons about integrity and community service had played out in this little corner of Texas. Looking across the lake at families enjoying the water, kids learning to fish, and neighbors helping neighbors, I realized that true wealth isn't measured in bank balances. It's measured by the positive impact you have on the people around you. My phone buzzed with a call from a rancher in Oklahoma facing similar HOA harassment. Sarah mentioned there's a pattern of out-of-state developers targeting rural properties with the same tactics. Looks like I might be becoming the go-to guy for fighting corrupt HOAs across the region, but that's a story for another day. If you've got your own HOA horror story, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story got your blood pumping like mine did, smash that subscribe button, because I've got plenty more David versus Goliath stories coming your way. Remember, they can try to control your property, but they can't control your principles. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead while lifting up everyone around you.